Hello, everyone. Good morning. My name is Dr. Christian T. Pascual. And today, we will be having the punto por punto, one-on-one conversation about crime prevention through environmental design. And to everyone who are tuning in their respective houses or place of work, welcome in today's webinar. So allow me to introduce our speaker first. This morning, we are fortunate enough that we have a very competent speaker. Our speaker has a Master's of Criminal Justice from the University of Malaya, that's in Malaysia, and is also a certified CPTED practitioner from Florida Atlantic University, or FAU, and the International CPTED Association. Shamir is our speaker is a co-founder of Prevent Crime Now and a director at the International CPTED Association. He's a crime safety specialist that focuses on simple and effective crime prevention methods to help reduce the risk of you and your loved ones from becoming victims. Shamir co-founded, as I've said, Prevent Crime Now in the year 2010, and it has become one of the most talked about practical safety and crime prevention programs in Malaysia. So, without any further ado, allow me to introduce and welcome here with us Mr. Shamir Rahadurai. Hello, Shamir.
Hi, Mr. Christian. How are you?
It's been great. How are you, my friend?
I'm very good, brother. Thank you very much.
All right. So,
And first of all, thank you for having me on the show. It's
no,
amazing
I
what you're
should be
doing.
the one thanking you for accepting the invitation for the show. I'm sure that our audience will learn so much from you this morning.
No, thank you very much.
All
Yeah,
right. So I guess we can get it started, right?
yeah,
So my first question to you is quite
yeah.
or expected already, and the question is in the most simplest definition. What is CPTED?
Okay. So if we look at let's put it in layman's term. Basically, CPTED talks about designing a safe city which is free from crime and fear of crime, using architecture instead of the usual, CCTV and target hardening methods like security guards. This talks about using architecture and landscape to reduce crime. So,
All
in
right.
the simplest terms, that would be it. But of course, it is not as simple as it
I
sounds.
know.
It always goes into much more detail. And I think as we go through today's program, we will go into those details, and I will give you some examples on how it can be effective as well.
All right. So,
Yeah.
Shamir, as criminologists, our responsibility obviously is to try to understand uh, people, right? We have to understand society, we have to understand criminals, crime, so that we'll be able to develop theories on how to explain why they exist. And with
Yeah.
those theories and explanation, we come up with, possible recommendations or policies, programs that we could do in order to help stop it, right? Prevent it.
Okay.
So SIPTED may be coming from, from that understanding of how people, society behave. So maybe you could give us some of the theories behind
Yeah.
SIPTED.
Most definitely. Of course, when we look at septet, it's interesting that in Asia we are just hearing about it, or in the past few years is when we've been exploring it. But septet has actually been coined in like 1970. The person who coined septet was C. Ray Jeffries. He coined it in 1970, and it has evolved, of course, from that time till now. And when we look at the theories of septet, of course, there are many important things to it. I'm just going to flash my screen over here so we can see what's going on. Let me see my
All
screen.
right, go
Okay.
ahead.
Okay. So when we look at septet, there are actually four main elements to septet. All right. There is natural surveillance. I hope everyone can see my screen. Territorial reinforcement, access control, and maintenance and management. These are the basic concepts behind septet. But how does this work with, of course, if we look at criminology theories, how do we know what works and what does not work, right? So when we look at it from a criminologist perspective, there are a few theories, I believe, that go into septet. Of course, almost most theories can work very well with septet. But what I want to do is I want to look at very specific theories on Let's talk about the first one first, natural surveillance. So if we look at natural surveillance, I'm going to share my screen again, just so you understand what natural surveillance is. Okay. So natural surveillance is basically the concept of directing primarily to keep intruders out of sight, right? So basically, it talks about the concept of the eye on the street. What you're doing with that is that you are creating an environment where you've got legitimate users of that area to keep an eye on the area. You see, criminals are not scared of committing crime in public spaces. They are not. That's why a lot of crime happens in public spaces. But what they don't want is to be detected early, to be detected before they can commit that crime. And that's what they don't want. And that's what natural surveillance helps you achieve. All right. And of course, how you do that is that, again, we go back to architecture. How do you use physical features, maybe activities, to maximize the ability of what's happening in that area? Okay. And that's how you discourage crime in the area. Which criminology theory best explains natural surveillance? Okay. I'm going to give the audience about maybe 10 seconds to think about this. You've understood the concept behind it. So which criminology theory best explains this? Okay. There are a few which could go well with natural surveillance, but my personal preference would be the routine activities theory, right? The most basic of the basic, but I think I explained this very well. Why does it explain it well? Because for routine activities theory to work, there must be three elements present. One is a motivated offender, which I don't think you can do much about it. Okay. Second is a suitable target or victim. Again, you and me could be suitable target or victim. Okay. But three, the absence of a capable guardian is what is needed for crime to happen. Okay. What natural surveillance does is that it creates this capable guardianship, right? Because now you've created eye on the street. You've created a group of people who are able to keep an eye on what's going on in that area. It can be as simple as a neighbor, right? They're just keeping an eye on what's going on in an area. And that creates the concept of capable guardianship, which, of course, when you look at routine activity theory, it states that if any one of these three elements are missing or not present, crime is discouraged. I'm not going to say it will not happen, but is discouraged. So that's one of the theories which I think work very well with routine activity with natural surveillance. But going on into natural surveillance, I'm going to give you some example what natural surveillance is as well. It basically means you are able, if you look at the diagram over here, nothing is blocking the view. So if we look at the guy right on top over here, his vision is blocked by the tree. Okay, so he cannot see if somebody is stealing the car. But the other floor, the lowest ground floor, you have perfect vision all throughout. This is again good example. There is nothing blocking. Very good vision of what the surrounding area is like, right? Okay. So when we look at natural surveillance, it's always very important to design with surveillance in mind, right? That's the main idea. Which basically means you avoid any blind spots. I'm not going to say any blind spot, but you try to reduce as much blind spots as possible, right? Another example, we look at parking areas. Let's just say you're building an apartment complex. You've got over here, as you can see, one blind wall. What happens when there are blind walls? There's not enough lighting, lacks natural surveillance, prevents eye on the street. So what we do is that we try to provide visuals on both sides, or if not, worst case scenario, lighting. That's what we want. So this is some examples of natural surveillance. Okay. If you look at this example, this is exactly how natural surveillance fails. You've got this nice big tree which has grown, which basically blocks the view of the apartment complex right in front of you. So again, this is how sometimes when when architects and landscaping department do not collaborate properly, this is what happens. And this is why it's very important to use CPTED from the conception stages, from the drawing plans itself, instead of slowly inserting it later on after a plan has been done. Okay. Remember we said there are four main theories to CPTED: natural surveillance, territorial reinforcement, access control, and maintenance and management. I just want to touch on maintenance and management today as well, okay? Because basically maintenance and management talks about if you keep an area well maintained, clean, well secure. One, there's going to be a lot of community ownership to that space. Two, it is definitely going to prevent crime from happening because, again, people know this area is well kept. People take care. People are aware in this area. Let's not commit crime in this area. There's always another neighborhood we can commit crime in. Okay, and of course, neglected and poorly maintained properties are, of course, breeding ground for criminal activities. Okay, let's look at which criminology theory best explains this, and everyone should know this. Of course, is the broken window theory. Okay, broken window theory basically talks about if an area is not well kept, it is neglected, crime happens. They say one broken window leads to another and leads to crime happening. So, if we look at just crime prevention itself, this is exactly how it happens. I'm going to share again another picture just so you understand how this works. Okay, so again, you see, maintenance and management not good in this area. One look at this place, you would assume crime is happening in this area, right? Again, not well maintained. So people actually, the reason why I took this picture is because criminals actually break into this apartment complex through this area. They will go through this fence, rob places, and come out through this fence. Okay, it is well hidden. There is the place for rubbish collection over here, so many people don't keep an eye on this area, right? This is another space, for example. This is what interesting about this space. This is in Manila, actually. The underground walkway in Manila. When you walk through it during the day, perfect, not a problem. You're not scared, nothing. But when you walk at night, even though this place is well lit, there are CCTVs. Occasionally, I see a guard in the area, but because it is not well maintained, as you can see, the walls and all are a bit dirty. It creates a little bit of a sense of fear when you're walking through the area late at night, right? So, you see, just one small element was missing from this whole thing to make this place perfectly secure. So, these are again some elements which create a bit of fear through the lack of SEPTED application. So yeah, so when we look at theories, these are just, I wanted to just share, these are two theories which work very well with natural surveillance and maintenance and management.
Balik mo na ako. Ay, sorry. Because the technical guy cannot see away. But Shamir, yeah, those are, I really, I mean, broken window theory, routine activity theory are two theories that are, really familiar. Should any criminologist, right, should be familiar
Exactly.
about that. It should be easy to understand. And the way you explained it earlier, I guess it could also be understood by a wide audience. So that's right. And at this point, before I ask more questions to you, I would like to say good morning and give a quick shout out to everyone who are tuning in right now in their wherever they are, right? Probably in their home or somewhere else. Mostly probably home. Oh, hello, Henry Ford Tuazon. Thank you for that comment. He said he put a heart. I think he's one of our students in the University of the Cordilleras College of Criminal Justice Education. Hello, Mark Anthony Dumas. Yeah, and good morning as well. So yeah,
good morning to everyone. Salamat
there are some
good
comments
morning.
here. It makes us feel good that we're not alone. Makes this even more worthwhile for us. Oh, there's someone from University of the Pangasinan, FINMA. Hello, everyone. Hello, Lloyd Ramos, and to all your homies from the University of Pangasinan, FINMA. They also have a good criminology program in that university. And I think you met some of them in Cebu, Shamir, or in some of the conventions where you got invited here in the Philippines, some of their professors. Yeah, so for everyone, there will be a question and answer portion later on. Feel free to comment your questions below, and Shamir will be very happy to,
more than happy.
Questions. And by the way, Shamir also got an invitation to talk about more about CPTED here in the Philippines later this year. Will it be later this year?
It will actually be in November. We are actually collaborating with the PCAP to actually, and it's free. We are conducting a webinar just to further explain or give examples. There will be very practical example on how SEPTED can be applied mainly in the Philippines and Asia.
All right, that's something that we have to we really look forward to, Shamir. And if you wanna know information about that, and if you want to register, I mean to be in a loop, right?
Yeah, be in the loop.
We will put the Google Drive, a Google Drive form where you could put your email there, contact information, so that
Yeah.
once the event is already up or before it gets up,
Yeah.
Shamir could send you an email, right?
Yeah,
About
that's
it.
true. That's right.
So it
Yeah.
could be in a description of the video later, but also in the comment. The link will be posted in the comment as well. So so I guess enough for the announcement. Let's
All
proceed,
right.
Shamir, with
Yeah.
a lot of questions. I have a lot more questions for you here. And you spoke earlier more about a little about history. You've mentioned the person who pioneered, first
Yeah.
coined the word
Septet.
CPTED. But I want to learn more about how it evolved. Maybe just like criminology, where there was a classical criminology and then a
Yeah.
modern criminology, independent criminology. Maybe there's also like some major phases in the development of CPTED in its history. So
Okay.
so maybe you could talk about those.
Can,
Um,
not a problem. So
all
of
right.
course, with any great theory, there are always people who will further research on it and
Yeah.
expand on it. So when C. Ray Jeffries first did it in 1970, there were of course also Oscar Newman who had the defensible space theory and all, and that worked very well. So it first started with the first generation septet, or what we call it, right? And this, when we look at just first generation septet, it goes even further back to like Elizabeth Woods. When you talk about building safe neighborhoods and all, it goes back way back. So that is first generation septet, very community based life. Then we've moved on to second generation septet, which is basically what we shared just now, the four main theories: natural surveillance, territorial reinforcement, access control, and maintenance of management. Uh, Now, very recently, we've moved into third generation septet. Uh, the thing with third generation septet, it is so new. Only a handful of people, I think, have researched on it and maybe coined the term third generation septet. And that basically talks about using green technology. One of the things is using green technology, using more landscaping, to talk about third generation septet. I'll be very honest, my knowledge on third generation septet is minimal. Again, because it is such a new field, even for septet practitioners. A handful of us have done it. So that's how it has progressed over the years. Third generation septet is so new. There's very limited literature on it. So a good thing is, since there's limited literature, there's not much reading to be done yet. So you can probably get it done in a day or so. You just read through literature. So
All
yeah,
right.
that's for those who are interested.
So I guess anyone who's not yet, who's it's first time to, learn about SafeNet today can
Yeah.
still catch up,
Yes, they
because
can. They
we're
can
still in
actually.
uh, we're still in the first generation SafeNet. And in relation to that question, I guess I would like to ask as well, like, what is the current status of CPTED worldwide? And then maybe you
Okay.
could do a little comparison between how far are you in Malaysia when it comes to CPTED as a discipline
Okay.
compared to the world, and maybe compare the Philippines as well, because you've been doing a lot of research here in the Philippines.
Yeah.
So I guess you have an authority somehow to talk about the current status of CPTED here in our
Not a
country.
problem. Yeah. So, of course, SEPTED, we do have an international association. So there is the ICA, International SEPTED Association. I've been fortunate enough to be a director on that association, and it's worldwide.
All right.
Um, Certain countries have applied SEPTED very well. You've got countries, you talk about certain European countries, you talk about Latin America. Latin America has a very strong SEPTED movement. The US has a very strong SEPTED movement, Australia as well. Uh, the good thing is that these countries have enforced SEPTED into their town plan guidelines. So that makes SEPTED compulsory to a very large extent. When it becomes compulsory, then you've got more people doing more research into it, more people getting themselves certified to be part of it, and that helps expand SEPTED, because then you have people from different experiences contributing to SEPTED, and that's amazing. That's what we want at the end of the day. When we talk about, let's talk about Southeast Asia, so I can include Philippines into it as well. Unfortunately, we've got I would say at the moment, I'm the only certified septet practitioner within this region. And of course, it's good that I am able to share this knowledge, but it's also bad that in such a big region, there's only one person which is certified by the association. You've got people who maybe who have done criminology, who then preach about septet, but again, that knowledge is going to be very limited because when we are part of the International Septet Association, we get to understand it on a larger scale, on a more global scale. Uh, so within this region, unfortunately, I'm the only one, and I do hope more people would participate and help expand this field of study. Let's do a quick comparison between Malaysia and the Philippines. Uh, in terms of crime, we are almost similar. We are actually quite similar in terms of crime. But of course,
I'm
you've got.
sorry. I'm sorry to hear about that. Because I know the status of crimes in the Philippines. But yeah, yeah, go ahead.
Unfortunately, it's quite similar. Of course, slight difference. I think Philippines, when I was looking at stats the last time, your crime is way more than Malaysia if you look at on a daily basis. But of course, you're a much bigger region than us. Uh, but
Yeah,
you've got
we
things like
are
crime.
more than 100 million population.
Yes,
Right?
way bigger than us. We are 31 million. You're so much bigger. So we've got that, and so that has helped a little bit. Especially that's why I ended up in the Philippines as well, quite a bit, doing a bit of research and consultancy over there. Is because of the similarities between crime in our region. Um, Malaysia has moved forward a bit more with SEPTED, in the sense where we have also included it as part of our guidelines, town plan guidelines in certain cities. So that has
Oh,
been
I
good.
think
It
we
has helped
lost.
reduce.
Or,
So that's how it has helped reduce crime in Malaysia. Unfortunately, when I've been to the Philippines, it's not part of the town plan guideline yet. Uh, but again, I think in a few years, hopefully, with the push of a lot of policies and all, it could be. But one thing I would have to say is that in comparison to Philippines and Malaysia, Philippines has pushed for more septet education in comparison to Malaysia. So that's very good. I think it's mainly because of your criminology programs
yeah.
and amazing shows like Punto por Punto, which of course is
You're
is
flattering me,
promoting
my
something.
friend.
and,
Thank you
and
for
even the
that.
PCAP, PCAP has
Yeah.
always been, anytime they can talk about that, they've spoken about it. And then you have people like Mike Datowin, who has his LaGuardia talk show. He has spoken about septet as well, just to create that awareness and knowledge about it. So yeah, so I think this has helped, especially the Philippine region, to expand a bit on the septet knowledge. And also to all the viewers today, amazing job. You're spending Saturday morning sitting down and listening to a talk on septet. It
Yeah,
just shows the interest and the potential to grow in this region.
I know. So yeah, I mean, there are more than 500 accredited
Yeah.
criminology programs here
Universities.
in the
Yeah.
Philippines. So definitely, if we wanna inform, a wide the young generations, the young ones, and engage in research studies about CPTED, we could definitely. There's really huge potential here in the Philippines to do that.
Yeah.
But also, we think people like you who are passionate, very passionate, to share your knowledge and expertise about this to us, right?
Thank you.
You Before I move on with the idea and later on we'll talk about we will ask Shamir to go through the process of getting certified as a CPTED practitioner. I want to respond first or ask more about what you've mentioned earlier, because you said like in other countries, like probably in Latin America or in Western more liberal democracies, they really impose guidelines or in their policy to incorporate CPTED in the in their city
Town plan.
development,
Yeah.
perhaps in their long-term urban develop planning and all. Um, is it really like a mandatory? Like for example, if before you could build a house, you have to have the design of your house be evaluated by a CPTED practitioner, and if you could only get a construction permit after passing through that evaluation.
Okay.
Is that the
It's
case?
not specific to a house, but if you're talking about a development, yes. any town plan or city development has to adhere to those basic, and again, it's not detailed, but very basic SEPTED guidelines. Maybe your walkway has to be of a certain feet. You have to leave a certain amount of gap. There has to be adequate lighting. So those are the basics of the basics to ensure that at least SEPTED is practiced in some form. Of course, certain developers in Latin America and Europe and all those countries, they get certified SEPTED practitioners such as myself to look through their architecture design to see does this qualify to a certain SEPTED degree. That's what they would like to look at.
All right. So I guess like the general there are general guidelines that you have to you pass, and it's
Yes.
more of a it's not just a particular house. It's more of a like the plan of the entire community, for example, right? Like a park or a block of. Can you hear me well?
Yep. So of course, when we look at it, for example, I'm just going to give a very quick example of
All
how
right. All right.
SEPTED works in the Philippines as well, or in just a quick example. I'm going to show you a video of crime happening in the Philippines. So the viewers maybe then can just think about this for a second, all right? I'm just going to play the video. I hope it is smooth. Okay. So as we can see, the guy goes, he just grabs the chain from the jeepney. Yeah? Okay, so why? Okay, we don't have this in Malaysia. We don't have jeepneys in Malaysia, but similar type of crime. We've got snatch theft. So those who are watching, maybe very quickly you can just analyze. Since
Well,
this
you
is a
don't have
recording.
jeep in Malaysia, you know. You don't
We
have.
don't have jeepneys. No. So why do you think that could happen easily uh, in the Philippines? Yeah. So of course you might think now, oh, this is not SEPTED related. No, everything can be SEPTED related depending on how you look at it. So a few things we will look at that area. One is the design of that walkway. It created space for the criminal to get down off his walkway, reach out into a jeepney and grab. And of course, we have to look at the flow of traffic in the area. Very smart. He ran against traffic. But again, traffic is so bad that nobody is going to be able to catch him anyway. You're not going to be able to make a U-turn and keep up with him. So again, this falls back to urban planning, which relates to SEPTED. SEPTED is not so much just on reducing crime, but you have to think on the long term. Okay, traffic congestion leads to crime happening as well, because you cannot catch criminals in traffic jams. So all this comes into play. When we sit down, when we talk to the fire brigade, SEPTED is so important to them as well, because they need to get from point A to point B in time. If traffic congestion happens, they cannot. Of course, you can say, oh, fire is not, but of course it is. It's not crime. It is. What if somebody has committed arson? That's crime. So it all goes back to this kind of thing. In Malaysia, uh, when we talk to the police, the time they get a call to the time, the response time to get to the space should be between 8 to 13 minutes. That's the response time. But due to traffic congestion, especially during rush hour, there is no way they can get there within 13 minutes. So all this comes down to urban planning and SEPTED. SEPTED is so important to be incorporated from the very start of things.
Yeah, and just like what you said, just like on the video, the traffic jam also created a situation, uh,
Okay.
conducive for the criminal to commit crime, right? It
Yes.
created an opportunity for him to snatch whatever that item is from the person inside the jeepney.
Yes.
What do you call this? The next question again, and the next question that I would like to ask is more on how do you become a certified practitioner? Because we want to replicate, we want to multiply people like you,
Yes,
Shamir, and
we do.
maybe the second person to get certified by the organization you mentioned earlier will be coming from the Philippines, right? And
Yeah,
it
hopefully.
have a huge multiplier effect as well later
Correct.
on, right? In
That's
terms of
so important. A
yeah,
few things, of course. One of the things you can start doing is to get the basics of it, to understand the basics of it, is to start going for accepted courses. Of course, within Asia, there are not many around. I'm one of the few people that conduct courses on CPTED. So feel free to give me a buzz on that. But once you've understood the basics, that's when it's good to, at the moment, you can be a member of the CPTED, International CPTED Association. It does not make you an accredited member yet, but you'll be a member, and from there is a certification program you go through. That gives the board a certain level of understanding of how well you understand CPTED, and if you need to further education on CPTED. So again, it's a bit of a process where it becomes a bit easier if you have at least some sort of certification first. That makes it easier. Like for myself, I was certified by Florida Atlantic University first, before I was certified by the International CPTED Association. And of course, when I did my master's, it was on CPTED as well, my research. And then later on, when I carried on with other forms of research, it was always around CPTED. So that made it much easier when I was applying for the accreditation by the CPTED Association. And later on, when I submitted my course to be accredited by the CPTED Association as well, because we have those fundamental elements to it, and also a bit more intermediate to advanced elements of CPTED within our course, it was easily approved by the association. So this is the basic process. I would suggest anyone who's interested in becoming an accredited member, first go through a basic course, which gives you the fundamentals, and then contact the ICA, International CPTED Association, register for it, apply for the certification program, and then you would get accredited from there. I remember my accreditation by the association took about 6 months, give or take. So
Or you said 6 months.
6 months. It took about 6 months. It's not a 1 week, 2 week
I
thing.
know.
It's a bit of a process. It's a bit of a process. So it took me between 3 to 6 months, give or take. I would say 6 months to be safe. I can't really remember, but 3 to 6 months.
Just for them to evaluate your, just for them to evaluate your, the application that you have submitted.
So once you submit your application, they will give you a form to fill up. Over there in that form requires you to actually show how adequate you are in CPTED, or your knowledge on CPTED. What are programs you've been engaged in? Have you been in any form of projects which are CPTED related? At least when you have some sort of CPTED engagement, it makes sense for them to accredit you.
All right. So it's
Yeah,
gonna be a very selective process, I guess, because
it
they
is.
really want to make sure that only the ones that are qualified really get certified, right?
So
And so,
at the moment worldwide, we've got maybe about 100 over CPTED members in the International CPTED
wow,
Association,
that's a lot.
but
That's a few.
only, oh wait, it gets smaller, but only 19 people are accredited by them. One
Wow.
nine out of 100 something, only 19 people.
Right.
So
So there are 18 others of you. Others.
18 others of
All right.
yeah.
So that probably makes the idea that there's only one in Asia.
At the
Make a
moment,
lot
South Asia
of
at least. But
All
again,
right.
it's
So
not easy, that's why. But
right.
I see also there is a question by General
Yeah,
over
actually, that's actually leading up to my next question.
here. Oh,
My next
nice.
question is he generous, I guess.
General. Yeah.
It's in the Philippines. There's a joke in the United States when I studied there where, in order for you to know if someone is Filipino by its
Uh,
name, usually look at the first name. The first name is usually in English, and then
oh,
the surname is usually in Spanish.
that's
Like Christian Pascual, who won,
you were Spanish colonized, right?
yeah, John de la Cruz or something, it's here Generos Maniera, right?
Uh,
So her question is how effective is it? That actually my question is how do you in relation to that as
evaluate.
well, like how do you evaluate its effectiveness, right? So
Okay.
maybe you could talk
Yeah.
about that more, Shamir.
Not a problem. So I'll just share an example to just show how effective CPTED is. We were called in, myself and my team were called in for a project in Malaysia. There was a specific area which they targeted, which the city council targeted, and they told me, look, for the past 5 years, we've been trying to reduce motorcycle theft in this specific area, and we've not been successful. We tried strategy after strategy after strategy, but we are not successful. We want to try CPTED, right? So we said let's incorporate CPTED to see how this can be done. So again, CPTED is not simple as just sitting down. Okay, let's execute this. No, that's the main reason why CPTED fails at times. Let me just share with you how effective CPTED, how the process of CPTED can be, and why does it fail. All right. So I'm just going to share my screen again so everybody can see this. Okay. So one of the main reasons why CPTED fails is that there's an assumption of crime. Never assume how crime happens. And that is why being a criminologist is very important, but it's also very important to work with the police. If you can work with criminals, even better. They will tell you exactly how it works, right? Second, another reason why it fails is that because it is successful in project A, it will not definitely be successful in project B. You have different demographics, different layouts, different people, different types of crimes committed. So it will never, you can never copy and paste CPTED, never, right? And you do not look into the layers of crime and CPTED. So let's look at the layers of crime. First of all, how does crime happen? Okay, let's look at crime. We want to look at how did the crime happen. Next, we need to look at who was involved. And then how did these criminals escape? And why were they successful? That's the most important thing, right? And when we understand all this is when you would be able to execute CPTED effectively, right? And also another reason why it fails is because there's a lot of assumption on CPTED, and because you have non-certified practitioners who only know the gist of it, who are practicing it. So just to share how effective it is, we use the exact same concept in Malaysia, right? Myself and my team, we looked at the area and we said, okay, motorcycle theft is happening. First, we identified who was basically doing it, the demographics which are conducting this crime. And then we sat down with some people who basically crooks who explained to us how motorcycles were stolen, the modus operandi, how do they do it, which motorcycles are targeted, how do they break those bikes, the locks, and how do they start those bikes and escape. When we understood those things, what we did was, instead of going traditional and putting more CCTVs and all, which were already done over the years, putting more lighting, we designed a new motorcycle locking dock system for them. So we said, look, if you install these docks, it should reduce crime, because we based it on those concepts. And we said, but place, again, this is where CPTED comes in, place those motorcycle docks in these areas, because motorcycle parking most of the time is always placed at the side of a shop lot, behind shop lots, where there's lack of lighting. So no, place it in these areas, which were actually places which created natural surveillance. And when we did that, that is when we saw, after a year, they called us back and they said, hey, look, we were hoping to at least get a reduction of 5 to even 7%. We would have been more than happy. We've got 32% reduction of
Wow, that's huge.
area. Yeah, it's huge. So that is an example on how effective CPTED is, but only if it is applied properly. Only if it is applied properly. So yeah,
Yeah,
so I
and not
think
because,
that,
and just like what you said, Shamir, not because it worked in that particular, institution, that motorcycle locking dock, and then putting it in a particular place where it's more visible, automatically means that we can copy paste that and
no.
apply that elsewhere and expect that it will be effective. Obviously, just like what you said, it takes a lot of understanding of that building, the people around it, and the general environment, to design something that really is suited for that to ensure
Yeah.
its effectiveness. And so yeah, that's how you basically, that could be your metric, right?
Yeah.
In measuring its effectiveness, you look for how the crime was before, how the crime looks like before, and how the crime looks like, particularly the number of crimes, probably crime rate or crime volume, after it got implemented as
Yeah.
well.
So
So
the one
right.
thing which is interesting about CPTED is, as much as it's a global concept, and I think CPTED practitioners have always been very specific about it, it can be a global concept, but it has to be local implementation. You have to have, in every specific area, it to be locally catered or customized. So that is why whenever we were in the Philippines as well, we spent some time in every area we were at, so that whichever consultation we were doing, it was effective to that area.
All right, all right. That's good to know. There's actually a question here from Mr. Renson Muyao, and I think Mr. Renson Muyao is our one of our graduating students in our criminology program. He's doing his internship right now. They said, "Good morning, sir. Sir, from the regions, countries where CPTED is imposed, is there any loopholes you, sir, observe in imposing the said program?"
Yes, they are. Okay,
Interesting.
so I would let me give an example of when it's imposed by the city council. Again, it's part of the town plan guidelines that there has to be CPTED applications. Uh, a few reasons why the loopholes are there is because, one, the town planning or city plan guideline team or officers in charge have very basic knowledge on SEPTED, very elementary. I won't say elementary, so it's a bit of an oversell. It's below that, right? So when a developer submits their plans, they said, okay, I've adhered to natural surveillance because I've not put many trees. I've created territorial reinforcement because I've been able to define my public space and private space. I've created access control because I'm providing boom gates, and I'm creating maintenance and management because I've got very good systems over there, right? And the city council person will look at it and say, oh yeah, okay, this adheres to the basic guidelines, and they allowed it and they passed that project. But of course, any practitioner, when they look at it, will say, no, this is not enough. You cannot copy and paste. But to a town plan guy, a town plan or city council officer, he might say, okay, it worked in that project, it might work in this project. So these are the loopholes when the approving officer does not have the adequate knowledge or enough knowledge on SEPTED. So that's where the loopholes happen. And of
Right.
course, when we talk about the application of SEPTED itself, the loophole again happens when you copy and paste and you do not understand crime or who is conducting crime in that area.
All right.
Yeah.
There's also a question here from Mr. Charlos Wanding. Hello, Charlo. Thank you for this question. How can you apply safety in a place that was very crowded, such as a squatter area?
Okay, very good question. I love this question. So I'm going to give an example of Malaysia as well. We worked on this project where, again, it's a low-cost housing area. In a day, you can have 10 motorcycles stolen from this housing neighborhood. Okay, most people's rode motorcycles, so that in a day you can have 10. What they did was, in that area, since it was a squatter area or low-cost flats, we would say in that area, that specific area, um, crime was a big thing and it was very dirty and messy. What the city council also did was they got the residents together. They said, look, you know this is an issue, we know this is an issue. We are going to provide funding, but we need a team from this area to head a project to clean up this whole area, right? We will provide the funding, not a problem. And they did. They provided the funding. Residents, I think, were so annoyed about the motorcycle theft that they all, I think a majority of them said, we will be part of this project. Everybody volunteered. They cleaned up the area, repainted certain things, put plants. Basically, this goes back to the concept of maintenance and management. Again, broken window theory, right?
Yeah.
So they touched that, cleaned up everything, touched everything up, well, made the place well lit and all. And because the place, they started putting spaces for people to hang out as well, right? They started putting up, small tables with chairs. So these older and younger youths will hang out in these spaces late at night. They sit down, they drink tea or coffee together. The younger youths will be in one corner again, sitting down and just chit-chatting. Because now they are legitimate users in this space, it came down to a point where sometimes even in a month, there might not even be one motorcycle theft. Imagine from 10 a day to less than one a month. That's how it can work in certain areas. But again, this comes down back to maintenance and management and how the community feels about it, which goes back to the theory of collective efficacy by Samson. He spoke about it many, many years ago. Talks about how collective efficacy helps with reducing crime. This ties in very, very well with maintenance and management. The community has to work together. Community building has to be there.
All right. So I guess it takes a lot of like political will, right, as well, and creating that impetus among the locals, the residents itself, because
Like in the
they have
Philippines, the
very,
barangay has to somehow work together and do activities. If not, you are going to be in these sort of situations. I'll just share another example. If you look at countries like Colombia and all, very, very high crime, drug-stricken countries, we have had success stories in these areas because of the community building activities which were taking place in these areas. You reduce crime tremendously. So comes down to that community building. If you're talking
all
about
right.
squatter.
Speaking of community participation and the idea of trying to broken window theory, meaning you have to maintain that area, ensuring that there are no broken windows, everything is well maintained.
Yeah.
What do you say to some critics who says that CPTED, particularly in some illegal settlements or more relatively disorganized, like there's organized looking neighborhoods, um, is a form of gentrification where you make it. Gentrification means like you make something like a neighborhood or a district more beautiful to make it more refined and and
Upper class.
acceptable to the taste of the middle or
Upper
upper
class.
class.
Okay. So of course, the idea of septet is not only to beautify the place, but and actually that's a very good question, because that's what developers do. They apply basic concepts of septet and they hike up the price
Yeah,
tremendously. It happens in Malaysia as well. It annoys me a little bit that they do that. Say, oh, this is septet. We brought for septet. But when we look at the layout, we say, no, this is not even proper septet. But prices are skyrocketed, because why? They say, look, your property price is good because there's no crime happening in the area, right? So that is the part where I would say it is not very responsible of the developers to do that, just to increase a certain thing. And that's where I guess the local councils have to come in and say, look, if you're building this over here, you can still build a cheaper one over here for the less fortunate, but still following those septet concepts. Why not? So it always comes down, I guess, to that political part. The barangay has to play a factor. The town councils have to play their roles in doing this as well. Septet can be applied, again, it's a global concept applied locally. So it can be applied anywhere, depending on the research that has been done in the area and the groundwork that has been done in the area, and also on how well the community is willing to be involved in it. Of course, in comparison to maybe more expensive neighborhoods, compared to, if you look back at the questioner's quarter areas, the expensive neighborhoods, the reason why they can maintain such an area is because they're paying for it, for people to keep the area clean. Whereas if you look at squatter homes, you need to keep that area clean. You need to take that effort to clean up the area, to make sure there are no broken windows in the neighborhood. That's what you need to do, because you don't have the money to spend to get somebody else to do it. You do it.
correct.
Because you have to remember, when you're staying in a house, you're not staying in a house, you're staying in a neighborhood. Anything that happens in that neighborhood affects your home as well.
All right.
Mm.
All right. I guess that's a good. I guess we made it clear that CPTED is not, gentrification, right?
No.
Although making a place more beautiful could actually work, but it's not just, where it's not, CPTED is not limited to that. And um, speaking of which, before we go to this question from Mr. Mark Dumas, we mentioned earlier that CPTED is not just about, putting CCTV and all. Um, but what are the other misconceptions that you usually encounter about CPTED?
The first one is that it is easy. The subject is easy. You can copy and paste. These are the major misconceptions. But here's the thing. Again, I think another misconception is that CCTV is not part of subject. It is. When you talk about natural eye on the street and all, natural surveillance plays a part with the CCTV as well. Is that when you place a CCTV, there should be nothing that blocks the view of the CCTV. Sometimes, you place a CCTV and then you've got a tree which is growing right below it and all. So you've got those things as well, which we need to look at. So technology can actually very closely relate to septet. Again, how is it applied? Actually, that's one of my research projects which I'm doing right now, the incorporation of technology with septet. How does it work? So it can be done. Again, just needs to be done properly. When we look at it, the biggest problem is that they put a CCTV and they don't look at the sunrise or sunset of that area. So when sun is rising, there's the direct glare into the CCTV. So if crime is happening at that time, you cannot see anything. Or two, when the sun is setting. So again, this is where, as a septet practitioner, you need to look at all those aspects. And of course, this doesn't work too well with CCTV providers, because of course CCTV provider or security consultant will want to put as many CCTV as you want in that area. How septet works, and a lot of people don't realize it, is that septet actually helps you reduce cost on the long run. It can easily, we've done projects where we've reduced costs even after paying us by 10%. So as a septet practitioner, you look at, okay, which is the most specific area that you need to put these CCTVs. Lighting, you need to look at all this, but minimize it, because at the end of the day, when you have a security officer sitting down and looking at that many screens, he's not going to be able to identify crime or stop crime in any way in the control room, command center. So when you have minimal, it allows them to be able to to notify abnormalities if there are anything which is going on. So that is why CCTVs can work with septet, and it does work with septet. It's just how it is applied. You need to look at lighting, you need to look at location, you need to look at landscaping. These are the things you need to look at.
Right. Before we go more to the questions that on YouTube, and I guess we have still a couple of questions there. My last question, perhaps, is um, can who are the people who could be CPTED certified or practitioner? Like, I understand that it makes a lot of sense for you, for example, is who earned his master's in criminal justice
Yeah.
from a premier university to engage in CPTED as a certified practitioner. A criminologist, it also makes sense. But who are the other, like, what are the other disciplines that could also potentially engage in CPTED as well?
A few are actually, that's a very good question. I think a lot of people have again another misconception that only criminologists or police officers should do this, but no. You have architects who should learn CPTED, landscaping architects, town planners. It's very important for town planners to be engaged in them, and of course the police and criminologists and all within this line. But of course, if any of the viewers out there which are interested, feel free to drop me an email. I'm just going to later on, we are going to project my email over there, and
Yeah,
you
maybe
can always,
you could also put it. You could chat it
yeah,
in our private group chat, and then,
yeah.
our technician is Anthony. Shout out to you, Anthony, for the.
Yes, thank you, Anthony. Just drop me an email. I'll be more than happy to answer any of your questions that you have, and I'll, in any way I can help direct you to the right platform to be CPTED or to learn more about CPTED. I'll be
Alright.
more than happy to do that. Yeah. So
Alright.
sorry, it's .com. I made a mistake over here.
Oh, there's a mistake on the email.
I put comma. So it's Shame at preventcrimenow.com. So please feel free to drop me a thing. And thank you very much, Anthony, for projecting this.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
So,
So I understand there were a few questions earlier.
yeah, we have a few questions. But Shamir, expect a lot, maybe 100 emails perhaps, but that probably is a good problem, right?
No,
So
but it's a good problem to have.
there's
In
a lot.
any way I can help, I'm always more than happy to help out.
All right.
Okay.
There's a question here from Mark Anthony Dumas. Sir, most fire and life safety codes require that exterior doors on the schools and commercial buildings open outward.
Yeah.
This usually places the hinge pin on the outside of the building. Give one recommendation you would make to an owner of an existing building which this situation with regard to securing the pin.
Okay, so we have very similar fire codes as well in Malaysia as well. In fact, if you look at hotels, for example, every hotel needs fire and health approval. If they don't have it, they cannot operate, right? And we've done quite a bit of trainings and consultations with this hotel industry from 3-star up to 5-star, and we are able to see that it's actually not a problem in having a door open outwards, right? But what they have done to adhere to certain accepted principles is that they have made it transparent. So the glass is transparent, or there's some way to view who is on the other side of the door. So when either you're opening or closing, you can take precautionary measures. One of the biggest reasons why I think previously CPTED or one of the recommendations from CPTED was that you open the door towards yourself, so that if there's anybody, you can shut it immediately, or there's some sort of precaution. Or when you open it outward, people cannot hide behind the door and jump you. But if you were to put some sort of transparency between the doors, you've got, of course, tempered glass, and also that if not tempered glass, sorry, anti break glass and all, which of course when you open, even though people try to hit, it does not break, allows you to adhere to that sort of security protocols, but also the fire and safety health code. So those are some examples on how you, again, CPTED, depending on where you are, you need to tweak it accordingly. This might be able to work in maybe certain city centers. It might not be able to work in maybe smaller neighborhoods where cost is the factor. So everything needs to be tweaked accordingly to each project. But just to share, the project that we've worked on with the hotels actually adhered to that code, and it was effective enough for CPTED.
All right. So based on the examples that you've been providing, like for example, the door should be um, it's a transparent door, perhaps, so you could easily see from the outside. But also the window earlier, where you cut the tree or probably place the tree somewhere else. Somehow you increase the visibility, but to some extent you're also reducing the privacy of the occupants of that building. So how do
Yeah.
you reconcile that?
Okay, so there are two ways to it. One is, of course, you maybe can put a window tint so that you are there's a privacy within your space. But also, I've actually seen. I'm so sorry, but I don't have the picture examples. But I've seen some very interesting architecture, which has actually helped you see, but they cannot see, or it's difficult for them to see. The way the gates have been designed, some of it very well done. I maybe what we are going to do in the next webinar that we have in November with PCAP, I would actually project some of those pictures
All
so that you
right.
can see actually how does this it keeps your privacy but also increases visibility.
All right. So the,
But
the would-be criminal will be under the impression that he's being seen,
yeah,
right? Which is true. He's being seen. But I think the idea of the idea. I mean the design will only work if the criminal believes in the first place that he's being seen.
yeah,
So you have to design it in a way that he would believe that he will be seen if ever he
yeah,
gets do some criminal activities. But
yes,
at the
yes.
same time, I like the idea of you as an occupant
Mm,
would not be easily seen by whoever is
yeah,
outside, and I guess that makes it easier for people to subscribe to that idea and be supportive
yeah.
about it. There's
Yeah,
a question
there is.
from Jeff
That is
King.
why, sorry, just to add on to that, that is why it is so important for architects and maybe even ID, interior decorators, to go through subject courses. Because again, I believe, like myself coming from a crime background, criminology background, we have certain perceptions of certain things. But because I've worked so closely with architects and all, I'm very open to this sort of ideas. And every time I see something new, which is amazing, which I say this should be subject applicable, and it is. It's just that architects do not really study too much or venture too much into subject, which is a bit sad.
Yeah, well, we can invite you in our university to talk about this in our architecture program. We'll be
Oh, I
very much.
would love to.
Maybe
Yeah,
we could collaborate on some
yeah,
research project as well.
yeah.
There's a question here from Jeff Kindipan. Is it possible to apply CPTED in houses that have little to no gaps? So really
Actually,
big houses.
you're talking about terrace houses, right? That means there's no gap between the next house and your house. There's just a wall dividing it. Is that what you're talking about?
Probably, or
Okay.
like yeah, a really dense neighborhood where the houses are really there's small, open space
Yeah,
places. Houses are really right next to each other.
you can. So one thing is that this is where technology comes in. You
All
can
right.
actually use CCTVs for this area. That's one. The two is I would believe very closely in the form of territorial reinforcement for this sort of thing. So what defines your space, private space and public space? That would be one. And the next would be the natural surveillance aspect. I understand it's very close and all, but sometimes even something as simple as mirrors help create a lot of natural surveillance. So yeah, so that's one of it. Mm.
All
So
right.
it
So
can
I
be done.
guess
Like every time again, it needs to be localized, but it can be done.
all right. Thank you very much, uh, Jeff, for that question. And well, at this point, we don't have any more questions on YouTube, and I guess I was able to ask all the questions, and Shamir was able to really give us, answers and uh, to all of those questions. And we learned so much. I learned so much from you, Shamir. Thank you very
No,
much
thank
for
you very much.
having us.
Okay.
Would you like to thank some people? Give a
Yes,
shout out.
I think first of all, I have to thank you and your team, Anthony and all from the other side, our tech guy who is doing all this. I think what you're doing, especially with Punto Pro Punto, is amazing. I've seen some of the other talk shows you've had. This is an amazing platform for people to actually learn not only about criminology, but also other forms of crime and prevention methods. And again, if platforms like this do not exist, then we cannot progress. So again, thank you very much for having me on this segment, and thank you for all of those who have come in on a Saturday morning just to listen to the session. Thank you very much. But I also really appreciate the fact that all of you have taken the time off, because again, it just shows how committed you are to learning something new and also to enhancing the knowledge. And I do hope you venture into some sort of CPTED application throughout, or CPTED research in any time that you are doing your research. Feel free to drop me an email. Do log on to the Google Docs, put your email there, and we will keep you updated on the next webinar with the PCAP. And thank you very much. Thank you very much,
All
everyone.
right.
So much.
Shamir, I would also like to plug your Facebook channel, Crime
Yes.
Groups and Criminology.
Yes, that's the one. Let me just give you the exact link so that you don't go to a wrong one.
Okay. So Shamir actually has what do you call this? A Facebook page, channel, and you will learn so much from that. He did an interview
I
with me.
interviewed you.
Yeah, you featured me in one of your videos. So
Amazing. That was an amazing session.
you know, please watch that as well.
Yes.
All right. And so at this point, Shamir, thank you very much. And please, I hope this will be not the last time that we'll be having you in our program in any projects that we want. And hopefully we could collaborate with you. And there are some messages here saying thank you, Shamir and Sir Shamir and Sir Christian. And that's and those comments and all the viewers is actually a testament of how much they've learned, how enriching this segment was. And I hope that all the viewers would share this video. This video will be available. It will be uploaded in our YouTube channel. It will be available. So if you feel like this is something that your classmates or your professors or your colleagues or the public in general would need to know or will be interested about, please feel free to share it in your Facebook and all your social media, right? And if Shamir also actually plugged an event earlier where he will be invited by the Philippine Criminology Association of the Philippines, please do support that as well. And I'm very sure that you will learn more about CPTED from this very competent guy, just such an amazing guy. Malaysia and Asia in general is a better place because of people like you, Shamir. So,
no, thank you very much. Oh, you're so kind. Thank you very much.
All right, and tomorrow I just want to do a plug as well. We will be having a speaker who is an alumnus of our Shamir. You're also invited to tune in tomorrow.
Thank
it
you.
will stream here in our YouTube channel. A speaker is actually an alumnus of the University of the Cordilleras Criminology program way back, I guess, in 2013. And he is right now a lieutenant at the Philippine Coast Guard. So he's a commissioned officer, very young, still very young. He was actually my former student, and he will talk about how, from becoming a licensed criminologist, he became a commissioned officer and now holding a very critical position in such a very important institution. So that will be streamed at 3 p.m. tomorrow, and he actually filed a leave of absence just to be with us. So we're really fortunate to learn more, and I'm sure he will inspire so many people, just like the way you inspired them, Shamir. And I hope
thank
to
you.
visit. You're always welcome here in our country. You're part of the ASEAN. You don't need a visa. Visa on arrival applies to you.
The next time I'm allowed to fly, once the situation COVID is allowing us to travel, my next trip is to the Philippines. I hope.
Yeah, and I hope you gain some supporters here, so maybe they could be a tour guide. I can be your tour guide, and
thank you.
It's really interesting, probably, to do a tour with you around our city, around our mall, and ask you a lot of questions. Does this comply with CPTED? Is this?
Yeah. We should do a field trip with your class. Yeah, we should do that.
A field trip with probably some of our students as well.
Yeah.
Anyone interested? All right, Shamir, I won't hold you for too long. Thank you very much for the time, and we really appreciate you, man. And be safe there, and good luck with all the the advocacies that you do.
Thank you very much, brother. You have a safe day. Thank you, everyone. Have a safe day. Take care. Bye bye.
All right, bye bye.